In 5, 4, 3, 2, should be 2.5, 2 3/4. A little slower than usual. I've just been slow.
Okay.
Delegate Stein, you're a co-host. I think I made you a co-host. Wait, can I get back to the Zoom? Unable to live stream. Hold on a minute. Okay, wait, there's a few people. Let me let them in, including Delegate Otto. Okay, let me try live streaming again. There was a problem. Oh, maybe it is live streaming. Oh, no, it is being live streamed. Okay, we're all set. Yep, we're all set.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to the meeting of the Environment Subcommittee. Before I get started, just want to say a couple of things. First, reminder, we'll be having a meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30 to discuss House Bill 1165. So hope everyone has that on their calendars. And we do have a fair number of advocates with us tonight, and just reminder to everyone about the rules for folks who are not subcommittee members. If a subcommittee member recognizes someone, asks them to speak, then fine. You're good to speak. We'll ask you to keep it brief, given the hour. But otherwise, we appreciate you being a good listener. Everyone being good listeners tonight.
Yeah, I got it about 3 o'clock or 3:30.
Hey, Charles. Hey, Charles, you might want to go on mute.
No, that's all right. You can call me anytime. I'm on the damn Zoom meeting now with the
Charles, you should go on mute.
Or you can mute him too.
I muted him.
Okay. All right. And just to set expectations, I hope we'll be done by 9 o'clock tonight. So, we'll do our best. And so why don't we get going? Start, and we'll just go in numeric order in the agenda that Kristen sent out with one update, which added House Bill 1153. So Kristen, why don't you take things away with House Bill 24 and remind us where we are with the bill and the proposed amendments.
Sure. And so I'll describe the bill as amended with the sponsor amendments. I understand the Department of the Environment also has additional amendments that were handed out or sent out later this afternoon. So on the bill with the sponsor amendments, it requires the Maryland Department of the Environment to perform an environmental justice evaluation of certain permit applications if the facility is in a community with an EJ score above the 75th percentile. And so based on the findings of an evaluation performed, the department may deny a permit or impose conditions in a permit if a permit is for a new pollution source or a permit that allows for an increase in pollution from an existing source. With respect to renewals of an existing permit that would not result in an increase in pollution, the department may impose conditions in the renewal permit to address environmental justice concerns. I think that's pretty much the gist. The much of the other language in the bill as introduced was taken out, and this evaluation process, this EG evaluation process language that I just described is the bill.
Right. Okay. Let's see. Now, MDE to the definition of permit added 3 exceptions. Is that correct?
So those are not in the
Not in the
sponsor
reprint.
amendments.
Okay.
Yeah, the reprint copy doesn't have the MDE amendments that were sent out this afternoon.
Okay, is Les on the call? Or someone else from MDE to describe the MDE amendments?
Yes, I am on the call.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be great.
Sure. Les Knapp from the representing Maryland Department of the Environment. We were tasked kind of after the bill hearing with trying to pull together a stakeholder work group, including members both from the environmental justice advocacy community and the regulated community to work through some concerns and questions that had been raised. These stakeholder amendments represent some areas of agreement with some of the groups. They're by no means a complete consensus. We are still working on a little bit of refinements, but in concept, what these amendments are going to do is they are going to make a couple of clarifications. One, with respect to general permits, they're going to, one, exempt 2 narrow classes of permits from the entirety of the bill, and that would be a general discharge permit for residential or commercial construction and a general discharge permit to construct an electricity substation. Now, those are construction permits. They don't touch if you need a permit to operate ongoing, but that's just for the actual construction. Second, the bill would require us to adopt regulations to incorporate environmental justice considerations in general permits for industrial facilities that are issued by MDE. This is a major concern in some EJ communities, so we wanted to address that. And the reason we have to treat general permits differently is because it's one permit that applies to all permitted facilities of that type across the state. So it's not an individualized permit where we can put specific conditions on like a non-general permit. So that's why we're creating this bifurcation. Second, the bill would also require us, as has been discussed, to consult with stakeholders, with both the regulated community, underserved and overburdened communities, and environmental justice advocacy groups. As we develop the regulations, and in particular, we have to address the scope and parameters of the environmental justice evaluation, including mitigating and aggravating factors. We have to consider the applicability of any fee issued under this bill, including limits on types of technical assistance that can be applied. We also have to have a discussion of how to integrate environmental justice considerations into general permits that are included in the bill under that section 1601 of the environment article. And with the idea ideally being to integrate those in the next renewal point or permit cycle for that. And finally, we would also have to consider methods to improve outreach and notice effectiveness to EJ communities. The last amendment, sorry, there's 2 more amendments. They're both very short, though. One would say that the determination to put a condition on an amendment, it would have to show it has a substantial impact on the health of the surrounding community. And the last amendment would just clarify with respect to costs that it would be costs for technical assistance that's actually incurred by the department and not some outside entity.
Okay. I know, Delegate Ruth, you have your hand up. Before calling you, Les, I do just have a question. That there are, let's see, in looking at the reprint, let's see, page 6. No, I'm sorry, page 5, line 18, where the bill says if the, let's see, the EJ score is above the 75th percentile, the department shall perform an additional environmental justice evaluation of the permit application. Now, is that separate from the EJ evaluation or for general permits for industrial facilities, that's in your amendments?
So, yes, that would be separate. So we've got to kind of sort two types of permits out. One is non-general permits. Those are permits that are issued for a specific facility, for a specific activity. Those would be subject to the EJ evaluation because we can go in for each specific facility and make individual determinations on what can be done for that facility if there's an issue that needs to be addressed solely for environmental justice reasons. Second would be that for general permits, and again, these are permits that apply across state in or outside of an EJ community for that type of permit. So like, for example, a CAFO, all CAFOs in the state operate under one permit, and that permit sets requirements. So the idea would be for that discussion for to try to integrate EJ considerations. And again, with the respect to the industrial permits, that's a general permit, so we would have to put conditions that would affect every single potential facility.
Okay, and both of those evaluations will be fleshed out through the regulatory process, and that's what your amendment says in terms of sort of the process, consulting with stakeholders from the regulated community, et cetera, in developing these regulations.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Les, if I remember right, this does not include any permits for air quality, and is that still the case? Or do the amendments bring in anything for air quality?
That is still the case. The only air quality permit that is covered under the bill would be for construction of a facility with respect to air, but not to bring in the additional air quality permits.
I'm continuing to hear from environmental justice advocates that the air quality would be, at least the ones I'm hearing from, would be even more important to them than some of the permits that are addressed in the bill. And so this work group that's in the amendments, that's not gonna affect what permits get selected to cover, right? It says you're gonna engage with environmental justice communities, but there's no option for them to have a say in which permit, like to have these air quality permits included.
No, not as currently drafted.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Les, I have a couple of questions for you. I'm not sure why you're defining CAFO. This is my first question. Why are you defining CAFO?
So that actually, again, with the revision of the amendments, that piece is being deleted.
Got it. Okay.
Sorry, that was a leftover from an earlier version.
So that can be taken out.
Yes.
And then why do you want to exempt a general discharge permit for commercial construction?
So I think broadly looking in terms of for residential or commercial, and that includes mixed use, construction, as they kind of blend together. We just felt, and in discussions, that generally the issues related to particularly pollutions and the impact on public health were just not there for these types of activities. Second, there has been a discussion about the impact of affordable housing and improving the quality of life in EJ communities. So we felt that this was not necessarily a good fit for this bill. That doesn't mean in some other ways EJ can't be brought in to address those types of projects. But I think we just were focused on the bill and health impacts and for this bill, so that's why they were removed.
And one more question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
At the bottom of your first page, the department shall adopt regulations to incorporate environmental justice considerations in general permits. Why just for industrial facilities?
So there's two parts dealing with general permits. This is a requirement that industrial facilities R1 a huge class of permits and also something that has been raised by many of the EJ advocates as being important. So that's going to be a major undertaking that will take a little while to accomplish. Second, the other general permits that are listed under 1601 minus the 2 that are accepted for the construction permits, we're going to have a discussion about how to also bring in EJ considerations into them, with the idea being by the next permit cycle or renewal, we would cover those. So we are addressing other general permits as well.
Where do you address other general permits?
That would be under amendment number 3, subsection 4. B4.
Okay, and what does that mean, the next full permit cycle, as
That
opposed
would
to
be
the
the
next
renewal
permit
period.
cycle?
So the expiration of the current permit, whatever time they're in. So like for a MS4 phase 2 permit, that's a 6-year life cycle. At the beginning of that, end of that 6-year term, when we're ready to, renew the permit, issue a new permit of that type, we would bring them in.
So you'd only bring them in right when you're ready to renew the permit? Seems to me they should be brought in long before that.
That would require some modifications and some significant issues. And again, that would honestly, by the time to do that with some permits, they would already go through their life cycle and be up for renewal anyway before we could accomplish that. That would be a major capacity issue to manage. And some permits we think we could probably put considerations fairly quickly. Others are going to require a good bit of thought and debate.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Okay, Delegate Tarasa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to say I share Delegate Love's. I don't want to read too much into it, but maybe concerns. I'm concerned about the things she mentioned, I should say. I don't want to say she's concerned because she didn't say that, but I share those concerns. And not sure why we would want to approve an amendment taking this out.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Delegate Tarasa. Now, Betsy Nicholas had reached out to me saying that she wanted to provide input, and she had also had some conversations with the bill sponsor. So Betsy, you're welcome to weigh in.
Thank you. We had a productive conversation with MDE actually in the hallways yesterday and talked about the problem of general permits. And I understand that they don't fit nicely into how individual permits do. We had suggested that they could all be dealt with by regulations and then inclusion of what's determined in the regulations in the next permitting cycle. And I still think that that's what should be done here, as does the bill sponsor Delegate Boyce. So we would object to excluding big classes of permits. The construction stormwater permit, or the 20 SW permit, is thousands of facilities. On the Bay Journal, just a couple months ago, you could see the front page of the Bay Journal was the entire Gunpowder River that provides the drinking water for Maryland, looking like chocolate milk from a construction stormwater site, having impacts on that river. And the CAFO permit, while it is no longer exempted, it should be in the class where it would be dealt with by regulations, so that there can be specialized conditions added on there. We were also concerned about the essentially kind of undercutting the environmental justice scoring all the way back at the end, amendment number 4. That would say that the department, if the department determines that a permit would have a substantial impact on the health of the surrounding community, but the EJ screen itself uses 4 different factors in consideration: socioeconomic, pollution burden, pollution exposure, and health. So from our perspective, this reads 3 of those factors out of what the department is considering, and thus takes a very narrow bill to begin with and makes it
so narrow that we're concerned that it may not accomplish anything.
Betsy, just to follow up, you're saying that amendment number 4, you feel is too narrow and should reflect the other parts of the other components of that go into the EJ screen?
Yes, that it should be something along the lines that if the department determines that any new or renewed permit would worsen any of the conditions leading to the overburden under the EJ score, then they can make this determination rather than just limit solely to one of those 4 factors.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anything else you want to add? Based on, I know you've had conversations with the bill sponsor. Anything else you want to add, or?
Just in terms of the importance of developing these regulations and incorporating them in the next permit. So I was also a little concerned about the full cycle, that it should be as soon as practical, that they incorporated, like if a permit's 4 years into its 5-year cycle, it shouldn't have to wait for an entire another 5-year cycle. And it could be read that way right now. So it should be sort of as soon as it's available to do so on the next renewal.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Subcommittee members have any further questions at this point about MDE's amendments, what Betsy just said, or any other part of the bill? Delegate Terrassa?
Are we planning to vote on this now?
No, what I was going to say is that
Okay.
given the fact that it seems like there's some interest among subcommittee members and potential amendments, what I'm going to say is if anyone wants to put together amendments, please put them together, get them to Kristen in advance of her next, well, not tomorrow's meeting, but the next meeting that the committee schedules, either Wednesday or before then. So then we can circulate them. And Betsy, if in conversation with the bill sponsor's interested in any amendments, obviously, feel free to discuss with her. So yes, we're not going to vote. This is just for discussion, and we'll make that offer, to subcommittee members, but just get us, I'll announce by the end of the week when our next meeting is going to be, just get them to us in advance. But Delegate Terrassa.
Okay, so just to clarify, are you saying amendments to the MDE amendment? Or is that, I'm confused by whose amendment this is.
Well, let's see. I guess, Kristen, we have the reprint that you sent out.
The reprint is with the sponsor, Delegate Boyce's amendments.
Okay.
And then there's a separate document that was handed out that's the proposed MDE amendments.
Okay.
In fact, there was an
Well-
updated one, so it should say revised on it because they had to send a replacement.
Right. So let's work off the reprint that Kristen sent out, which has Delegate Boyce's at least initial amendments. So for any potential amendments, work off of that. Someone wants to include any amendment that MDE has submitted, obviously feel free, but if you want to, have separate amendments, feel free as well.
Great, thank you.
Delegate Trump? Okay,
Thank you.
sure. Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm thoroughly confused. So there is a reprint, there are amendments, then I'm told there's revised amendments. Can we just get, before we look at this again, can we just get a clean copy of the reprint and a clean copy of the amendments? Could we get that tomorrow or something? I can't figure this out now.
Sure. No,
Thank
that's
you.
a fair point. I mean, this has been moving pretty fast, so a number of things have been sent out. So Kristen.
Yeah, I'll send an
Okay.
email, we'll have the subject matter be House Bill 24 and we'll just put it all in one place.
Okay. And I guess the MDE amendments that you'll send out are the updated ones, the second set.
They'll be the
Right.
updated one, yes, of course.
Okay. And obviously, if anyone has any questions, reach out to me, Kristen, or to the bill sponsor. Okay. Are we good with HB 24, at least for tonight? Okay. All right, let's move on to what should hopefully be, it is a, I think, less complicated bill, and one about which I think we can move tonight, House Bill 78. And just as a reminder, we're secondary on this bill. Changing governance. Oops, my lights just went out. Hopefully they'll come back on. Sure, there we go. Governance and requirements for MES. Well, Kristen, maybe you want to explain sort of why we didn't move forward last week on this bill.
So when we last took up the bill, the appropriations had sent it up here, and the bill was altering some reporting requirements. I'm trying to get my copy in front of me, but there was concerns about the bill and removing some auditing and reporting requirements. And there was a suggestion made that if there was any of the elements of those reports that the subcommittee would like to continue, that we could talk to appropriations about getting language for the joint chairman's report. And just to move ahead with the bill as it came up from the appropriations. So there was questions, I know, I'm not sure if Delegate Morgan is in, but he'd had some interest, I think, in continuing at least some level of reporting of the salaries. You know, I know that MES had took that out just because of, maybe just because I think some salaries, I guess, that you would be able to publicly be able to determine just by the title. But anyway, I think in the end, Delegate Morgan liked the idea of having that information reported. And I know one suggestion was made to maybe limit those reports to the executive level salaries. So we haven't made any determination, though. The subcommittee didn't vote on what type of information they'd like to receive.
And I think Chair Corman has said that if there is any additional information that we would like to have reported by MES, that rather than put it into the bill, such as, for example, putting back in the requirement to report on salaries, that it could go in the JCR.
Yes.
So, Delegate Love.
Mr. Chair, you said exactly what I was going to say. So in that case, I'll move the bill.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
And so I'm sorry to interrupt, just there are amendments that appropriations sent up. So I guess you would want to move the amendments.
Okay.
Okay, move the amendments.
All right. Second on the amendments.
Second.
And Kristen, just to clarify, these amendments were ones we'd seen already, right?
Yeah, so they came up before. It was removing the boards. There was language in the bill regarding the quorum that came out, and then they changed some due dates for an audit and report just to align the dates.
Right. Okay, Delegate Foley.
Yeah, are they in the reprint that you sent out today?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions about where we are, the amendments? All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Bill as amended. Is there a
On the
second?
bill, move, yes, second.
Okay, all those in favor of the bill as amended say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, bill passes as amended. Thank you all. Next bill is sponsored by yours truly, House Bill 990. We don't have the official amendment back from the amendments office yet, but Kristen did send out the substance of the amendment, which has been agreed to by all the parties. So I figured we could just bring it up for discussion. Once we have the official amendment back, then we can, consider voting on the bill. So Kristen, could you explain where we are on the bill?
Sure. Well, the bill is making greenhouse gas emission reduction requirements apply to the production of cement by altering the definition of manufacturing for purpose of the Greenhouse Gas Emission Reduction Act. The bill also alters provisions relating to the regulation of greenhouse gas emission reductions by other manufacturers under the act. First, provisions limiting greenhouse gas emission reduction and cost increases are modified to apply only to persons who engage in manufacturing in 2023. And second, limitations on sector-wide greenhouse gas emissions reductions and cost increases for manufacturing are narrowed to limitations on specific manufacturers and their greenhouse gas emissions and cost in 2023. The sponsor submitted language to the amendment office that would require the Department of the Environment to make certain considerations when adopting regulations. I'm not sure if the chair would like to explain those. I would have to just read them right from the paper. I don't know if you can summarize them or not.
Yeah, I mean, again, these were worked out with the cement producers who are, they're the particular part of the manufacturing sector, which are, directly brought under potential regulation by MDE under the bill. So, they had expressed, and I think everyone heard during the bill hearing, that they had expressed a desire for MDE to consider concerns of cement manufacturers in developing the regulations. So it's basically what the amendment does, and it doesn't specifically require MDE to take certain actions or, with respect to actual regulations, but does say that MDE will consider a number of criteria, including credit for early action investments, adoption of policies that encourage use of alternative fuels, et cetera. So, and these were amendments that I thought were fine and proposing. But with that, happy to answer any questions. So, Delegate Terraza.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize, but I'm a little lost because I thought you said something about an amendment that wasn't drafted yet, but we have an amendment. This is 990, right?
Yes.
And I have an amendment sitting in my book here. So I'm confused about how that relates to the amendment. We have a copy.
It was drafted in, by the different parties, and it looks very official, but it hasn't. But we submitted to the amendment office, and it hasn't come back in official form yet. It should, once it comes back in official form, it should look very similar to what was sent out. But sort of that's the reason why it's not an official amendment yet, if that makes sense.
And and from time to time, you will have amendments that are like that come before you.
Okay, but will anything be different than what we're looking at? I think you discussed something different than what we're looking at. That's a not official amendment that looks official.
Yeah, I don't believe so, Kristen. I don't know if you think that the amendments office in looking at this would.
No, I don't, unless you have, I'm not sure of any questions, if the drafter would have reached out with any questions. Certainly if the question is whether, what type of draft language the subcommittee can move forward on, that's certainly at the discretion of the chair. As the subcommittee is comfortable with language, oftentimes, we do have to just draft something up on a Word document. However, I think what the chair was explaining is that he submitted language to the amendment office, just wasn't prepared. So he didn't have that finalized amendment, but we did have the language to share.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think I was just confused because it looked like an amendment.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Again, we should get the official amendment back very soon, and can take up the bill at our next meeting. If that works, if that works, okay. Okay, all right, very good. House Bill 991. Delegate Love is the sponsor, and so Kristen and Delegate Love, if you could explain what the amendments do. Yeah, if you could go ahead.
So the bill has been amended to change the responsibilities. It alters the responsibilities and it moves it over to the Department of Ag rather than the Department of the Environment. And so what this would do, it would be creating a permit for a person who utilizes food processing residuals, which these DAF materials come under that definition. So the bill would authorize Department of Agriculture to conduct a pre-inspection prior to the utilization of any food residuals, excuse me. If a person is storing food residuals, they will be required to meet the Natural Resource Conservation Service standards or an equivalent standard determined by a professional engineer. Any application of food residuals will have to be managed consistently with a nutrient management plan and required record keeping. MDA also has the ability to take samples of the food processing residuals and issue a stop work order if necessary. And in addition, MDA has the authority to impose an administrative penalty. So the idea was really to address this issue with the dissolved air flotation materials. And the idea was that MDA could work this in under their nutrient management program.
I may add something,
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Delegate Love, sure.
Thank you. And thank you, Kristen. That was perfect. Just want everybody to know that with the amendments, MDA, MDE, and all the local folks are good with this, and the environmental folks. So everybody is happy with where we are right now.
Okay, great. Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a question for Delegate Love or Kristen. So on page 5 of the amendment, it says a person may not utilize food processing residuals in conjunction with an agricultural operation unless the person has a permit. So is that an permit from ag or MDE?
It'd be from ag.
From ag. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And Delegate Love, just, I know the language has changed, but in substance, I mean, I know that this does shift responsibility from MDE to MDA, but in terms of sort of the substance, is it generally the same in terms of what you're covering and sort of the requirements as your original bill?
Yes, it gets at what we wanted to get at. It just goes at it a little bit of a different way. But yes, it covers what we're trying to get to.
Okay. All right. Very good. And Kristen, could you explain where we are on the fiscal notes on this?
Yeah, so I did reach out to the Department of Agriculture, and they did say while they try to, reduce the amount of resources that it would take, they still estimate that it would take 2 to 3 pins. So we do have a question down to appropriations.
Okay, so if we wanted to move the amendments, we could do that, but I guess we couldn't until we get the official green light from appropriations. Can't approve the bill as amended. Remind me what the process is.
I think the process is the subcommittee can approve it with the amendments. The only problem is it would have to be held from the full committee until
Okay.
we got that type of clearance.
Okay. Any other questions about the amendments? So what would the subcommittee like to do? Would someone like to make a motion or review the amendments
Move
in
the
our
amendment.
next meeting? What's that?
I'd like to move the
Okay,
amendment.
Second. Second.
Okay, great. Any further questions about the amendments? All right, all those in favor of the amendment say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, bill as amended. I'll move it. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of the bill as amended say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, bill as amended passes. Great. And we will, Kristen, you will keep us posted about what will hopefully be appropriation sign off on the fiscal note.
Sure, will do.
Okay. House Bill 992. I'm the bill sponsor, and I know I have a fairly good recollection of what this bill does, but Kristen, if you could remind us.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any amendments. So the bill is requiring a local health department or county government to which the Maryland Department of the Environment has delegated authority to administer a well and septic program, to submit a schedule of review times for well and septic program permits to MDE for approval, And then beginning 3 months after a schedule is approved by MDE and every 3 months thereafter, the local health department or county government would submit well and septic program permit data for MDE to review.
Okay, so as you said, no amendments, no fiscal note issue. Any questions about this bill?
I'd like to move the bill.
Okay, all right.
Second.
Do a second. All right, all those in favor of the bill, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, bill passes. Thank you very much. House Bill 1008, I just want us to discuss. And Kristen, remind me this, the amendments were sent out for this, right?
Right. I don't think, we didn't have a reprint. There was 3 sets of amendments and I don't think I had the ability to merge them. So they're addressing, there are amendments addressing the exemptions in the bill. And then there was the term carrier was further defined.
Yeah, okay. So just to review the amendments, they exclude from the covered products, propane, remind me, Kristen,
Liquefied petroleum gas.
thank you, liquefied petroleum gas.
Oh, and then it also added language that would require MDE to use at least 40% of the amount that's
Right.
distributed to the mitigation fund that's established under the bill for activities or programs that address climate impacts in underserved or overburdened communities.
Right, and also clarifies that a carrier of natural gas is a pipeline under the bill. And also had an amendment which just makes crystal clear that with respect to the excluded petroleum products, it is any product that's listed in the COMAR regulation that sets up the fee that's assessed on oil products for the
transfer fee.
disaster and containment. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and that
just to be-
provision was kind of in the bill, and I think what the language does is it does further clarify and references the regulation that lists all of those
Right.
those fuels.
Right. Okay, Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kristen, did you send us a reprint? I saw the amendments.
You do not have a reprint. The amendments, there was 3 different sets, and so in order to have a reprint copy, I'll have to merge those amendments, which I can. I just wasn't able to do that today.
Was somebody else sending you like 6 amendments in every email, some of which were wrong? What do you mean you didn't have time?
I'll keep my lips sealed.
I am very intrigued by this bill. I think it is really important and thoughtful and clever. My only question is this done anywhere else, or would we be, the leaders in this space?
In testimony, well, I'll defer to the chair.
Kristen.
No, I just, because it comes from your testimony and others, is that there are other states that do something similar, I believe. I think New Jersey, I remember New Jersey being mentioned. I'm not sure if there's anything beyond that. I'd have to look back at testimony.
Yeah, Washington State. I mean, just to be clear, this would be somewhat new in the sense that it would be assessing a fee on it's basically coal and natural gas. Don't believe the other states assess it on those products, and we would be the first state to say specifically to implement climate mitigation goals. Washington State has an assessment, I believe it's on, I'm going by memory, but petroleum products, and it's used for a wide range of environmental goals. New Jersey's is just limited, I believe, to hazardous materials. So it's in sort of that sense that, those are sort of templates, but we take it a step further.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Terraza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll confess I'm not following as closely as maybe I would at a different hour, but why are we taking out propane and liquefied petroleum, and what's left then?
Coal and natural gas basically is left, which is substantial. reason why we're taking out propane and that liquefied gas, the name of which I always forget, is because those are more akin to petroleum products, which the large majority of which are already exempt from the bill because they're subject to the existing state's oil containment and disaster fee. So the thought was we wouldn't put an assessment on fossil fuels that are already subject to this oil fee. I mean, it still leaves pretty much coal and natural gas, which is substantial. But anyway, so propane, liquefied natural gas, liquefied gas are pretty, more akin to petroleum products. So, in keeping with that general exemption of oil products that are already exempted, I added those exemptions.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Delgado?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Has this changed the fiscal note any? This is a $300 million tax that you're putting on the consumers of Maryland.
Well, Delegate, I would respectfully disagree with you. It is, I mean, the fiscal note is lowered a little bit because of the amendments, but substantially the same. It is, I mean, one thing that I mentioned during the testimony is that this applies to products that are used in state and exported. Most of these products that the fee applies to are exported. So it's estimated that only a third of this assessment would ultimately be borne by Marylanders. 2/3 would be borne by non-Marylanders. Disagree as to whether it's a tax or a fee. But in any case, most of it would be borne by non-Marylanders. All right, Delgado, any other questions? Okay. And again, we're just going to hold this bill. We're not going to, take any action tonight on it. Unless there are any other questions, we will move on to the next bill. Delegate, let's see, Delegate Cheese, HB 1055. So Kristen, we took this up before. I think we were waiting confirmation on the updated fiscal note.
Right, we did receive an update from the Department of the Environment that by narrowing the what must be reported would eliminate the need to create this database, which was creating the fiscal note. So yes, the amendments do address the fiscal note, but only to the extent that not any additional reporting requirements are included. The narrowed language is what, I'm so sorry. It was hard to get out. If the language stays limited, then yes, the Department of Environment does not have to do this extra work by creating a database.
Okay. All right, Delegate Foley.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to move the bill.
Okay.
I guess maybe we have to do the amendments. Are there
Right, we
amendments?
have to-
Yeah, okay. So I move the amendments to the bill.
All right, so
Second.
second on the amendments.
Second.
Okay, any further question about what this bill does? I mean, there's specifically the amendments or as amended. I'm sorry, someone else had their Delgado, is your hand up from the previous bill?
I think it was. I thought I had lowered it, but I did have a question.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Does this satisfy MACO and MML's concerns
Yes,
for this?
from my understanding, yes. They worked on with the sponsor on the amendments.
Most of my areas wouldn't use any more than they need to for safe driving, so I don't think it's worthwhile myself, but thank you.
Okay, does someone else have their hand up?
I did, Mr. Chair, and it was mostly to second. But if I may, now that I am speaking, may I?
Sure, by all means.
I will just say that, being out and walking my dog, I do see even now piles of salt from when it snowed before. So I am glad about this bill. I know it's been moved and seconded. And when that is all done, I'm going to move the bill as amended.
Okay, all right, very good. So as Delegate Love said, the amendments have been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, bill as amended. I'll move it as there's, and Delegate Love, you're seconding, I
yes.
guess, right? Okay, all
yeah.
those in favor, of the bill as amended, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right.
No,
Okay, all right. Noted, Delegate Otto, and bill as amended passes. Okay, let's move on to House Bill 1101, Delegate Love. And we do have amendments for this bill, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Kristen, if you could start, and then Delegate Love, I'll ask you to
Sure.
chime in.
With the amendments, and the bill is intended to restore the pre-Sackett legal threshold for standing, which would allow standing for people and organizations. It would allow them to enforce or intervene in any state action to enforce provisions, non-tidal wetlands provisions, and provisions of law under the water pollution control, like discharge permits. So we do have amendments that narrow the bill as introduced that came in, and it would have covered more environmental provisions. So this is trying to put it in line with what was available pre-Sackett to just the non-tidal wetlands protections, and then addressing those discharge permits.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Love, do you want to?
Nope, she did a great job.
Good job. Okay. And certainly entertain any questions from subcommittee members. Just so I'm clear, so I guess, I mean, Kristen, you mentioned this in Delegate Love. You said you did a great job, but just to confirm, so the with Sackett, that took out standing for review of non-tidal wetlands. And let's see, was there another category of water?
It's basically, it's dealing with the bodies of water that didn't have like the surface connection to
Right.
bodies of water that would be protected under the Clean Water Act. So that would bring in your non-tidal provisions, as well as concerns about having discharges to bodies of water that didn't meet that continuous surface connection requirement.
And
Okay.
also, if I may add, Mr.
Sure.
Chair, intermittent and ephemeral streams. So some streams that are seasonal. Those are no longer covered under the federal Clean Water Act, but they are covered under the definition of the waters of Maryland. So we are looking for standing to protect those.
Right, and that's what the two subtitle references cover, is that right, in the bill?
Correct.
Yes.
Title 5, okay. Okay, Delegate Terrazzo.
I think Delegate Ruth has had her hand up for a while.
No, you are right. I'm sorry, Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So associations were removed from this bill, is that correct? Am I understanding right, looking at the?
Where are you looking?
Wait a minute, am I on are we on HB 1101?
We
Yeah.
are.
Yes, we are.
So I'm looking at the reprint that was sent out, and I guess on page, well, the definition of standing is removed, and then on page 3.
Some definitions were removed,
But then
but
it's,
this would allow people, an individual or an organization, I believe, who meets the threshold standing requirements.
because it says the like line 28 on page 3, one or more so this is an association has standard, I'm sorry, page line 24, an association has standing and claims, and that's all crossed out.
So I'm sorry, line 24 of which page?
Page 3.
I think,
So I think right now, the way the bill is drafted is that it's providing standing to a person, and a person's at a defined term, and that's going to go not just to individuals, but to, that would cover associations as well.
Oh, okay. I understand. Thank you.
I can check on that too.
that's my understanding as well. Yes.
Right, so the standing requirements under federal law are incorporated by reference here. I mean, just sort of a, I guess there isn't a statutory site for that, but just this is understood under federal case law. Is that right, Delegate?
Yes.
Okay. Delegate Traza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, so we're not excluding one or more members of an association having standing under subsection A because they're already covered. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
I think there is confusion. I can see by seeing this language that's been taken out, and it is really just to it's just because that language doesn't fit. It's not meant to restrict a person's right to standing. It's
Okay.
just, go ahead.
Okay. Well, okay, that's good. So, and then I missed what narrowing. I didn't understand that this was expanding standing to other topics. It was just expanding it to other bodies of water, right?
Well, the bill is initially as draft, it came in and covered multiple titles, subtitles in the environment article. And what these amendments do is that it reduced it to just apply to the non-tidal wetlands provisions and the water pollution control where we have the discharge permit provisions.
Okay, thanks.
Before it came in, it applied to tidal wetlands, which, you know, those do have Clean Water Act protections already.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Delegate Love, I would like to hold this, just make sure any questions are resolved until our next meeting. I don't think I've got any questions, but just so we can just be 100% sure if that, so, but certainly if there are any other questions.
Sorry, just to point out this, I believe this one still had a fiscal note associated with it where the department believed that it did need legal staff to implement the bill's requirements. So this is one that I do have a question down on the bill with the amendment and
Appropriations.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Next, let's move on to Delegate Guidance, House Bill 1147. Kristen, if you could explain where we are on that bill.
So we have amendments. So the bill came in prohibiting a person from using, supplying, selling, etc. In the state playground servicing materials that contain more than a certain threshold of lead, PFAS substances, and PAH. So we have amendments that would, instead of prohibiting the use of these types of substances, it would prohibit the installation and then the supply, sales, etc. of playground surface materials that contain lead or PFAS, but the language regarding PAH is being taken out of the bill. And then there is also an amendment to add that the provisions of the bill apply prospectively.
Okay, Delegate Ruth. Oh, let's see. Delegate Ruth. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm looking at the definition of PFAS, and it just says PFAS means per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. That may not be specific enough. I'm not sure because there's a lot of discussion about the definition. The one that we used in the George Walter Taylor Act was that it has at least one fully fluorinated carbon atom, and I believe that definition is also used in Delegate Love's bill that's on the list for today as well.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. And so the bill does later go on to say that these surfacing materials can't contain fluorinated organic chemicals that contain at least one fully fluorinated carbon atom, including PFAS substances. So I'm not sure if that takes care of your concern or if you think it needs to be further clarified.
Well, I just think it would be good to have a consistent definition in state law.
Sure.
Thank you. May I speak to that? So this is the definition. We took it from the previous bill.
From which bill?
From the bill for foam carpets and what was the other thing? Boys, it says fluorinated organic chemicals that contain at least one fully fluorinated carbon atom, including PFAS substances.
Right.
And that was what Maryland Department of Environment also recommended.
Yes, but that's not what the definition is here. The definition says PFAS means per and polyfluoroalkyl substances.
It's later in the bill, on page 3. I don't know why the definition is not consistent with what is not allowed, but it's on page 3, page 2, line 29 and 30.
I think it's because PFAS is being is an acronym. And I think the intent in that definition was to just explain what that acronym is because it was used later in the bill. So instead of defining them as the containing at least one, they're just using that language in the bill.
Okay.
Okay.
Ruth, do you see where
Ruth, go ahead.
29, 30, where
I'm
it's
sorry,
defined?
go ahead.
I just want to make sure she did find that on page 2, 29 and 30, where it is defined.
I did, but that still leaves the definition, which is more vague. And given that there's discussion, more wide discussion about what the definition is, I just think it would be important to have a consistent definition. And full disclosure, I also have a PFAS bill, and this session has a hearing in HGO. And so I just, I think it's important that we use a consistent definition in state law.
I mean, that doesn't bother me at all if you would like to amend that onto the definition.
That would be great. I would like that. Thank you.
To the bill, it really doesn't change anything, but if it makes for more
Right.
confusion, I'm all for that.
Okay, Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as the sponsor of the George Walter Taylor PFAS Act, thank you, Delegate Ruth. I was going to ask that we can just refer back to that definition. It was a hard-fought definition, so I understand it is later in the bill. I don't want to hold the bill up, but I'd like to just have that definition either be referred to or consistent.
I understand. I don't have the definition in front of me, but I do remember seeing that definition, and does it only reflect like back to substances intentionally added?
No, it does not. And I know that is in the other bill it does, but in this bill it intentionally does not.
That's my question is that by cross-referencing it to the other one, it talks about, I think, PFAS intentionally added to certain things, but not
right.
playground.
But intentionally added isn't in the definition of PFAS. That's in what is prohibited.
I guess I was just wondering if the definition under current law covers PFAS and playground surfacing materials, just the way it's worded.
The definition of PFAS
Mm-hmm.
is just the definition of PFAS. So whatever, it's the definition of the chemical class. That's all. So if playgrounds have PFAS, then that's what's being covered in this bill. Does that make sense, Kristen?
So I'm looking, PFAS chemicals means when used in firefighting agents, firefighting equipment, food packaging and rugs and carpets, a class of fluorinated organic chemicals that contain at least one fully fluorinated carbon atom, including I'm not going to even try it this hour, but that was my question, is that it means the defined term, it says when used in firefighting agents, firefighting equipment, food packaging, and rugs and carpets.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Well, that.
Oh, I hear what you're saying, Kristen, and I remember that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because
I mean,
they
you-
wanted, yep, I hear you.
You could still track it. We could use a class of fluorinated organic chemicals that contain at least one fully fluorinated carbon atom. I mean, we can put that piece in. I just don't think cross-referencing it here would make sense.
I absolutely, yes, I stand corrected. Thank you. But I would like to use that definition.
Sure.
That was why, that was my comment as well, is that it had those things in it.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm Delgado, calling you in a second. What we're going to do is going to hold this to our next meeting so we can resolve the issue of definition. I also have a small amendment, one word amendment, on the reprint, page 2, line 28, I believe, and should be or.
Page 2, line 28. I'm sorry, let me look.
Yeah, it talks about 90 parts per million of lead and PFAS, but I think that should be or.
Sir, thank you for catching that.
Sure.
Absolutely.
My
Great.
legal training comes in good every once in a while. And I'm gonna call on Delgado, and also there was an advocate who reached out to me who requested an opportunity to speak on, I think, the definition, Nick Manis. So gonna get Nick, I'll get to you after we hear from Delgado and any other subcommittee member. Delgado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was concerned, I mean, MML and MACO raised some concerns about this, and was just the amendment going to satisfy some of their concerns, or?
May I speak to that, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
My amendments that you see on the interlineated version in front of you address every one of their concerns. These amendments came from them, specifically taking out PAHs, which was very difficult for them to wrap their heads around, and also redefining the surfacing as something that actually comes into contact with a person, rather than something that might be underneath. So yes, and you should have received a letter from them saying that their opposition had been changed to favorable.
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Love, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry.
I did. I was just going to ask if we can still move this bill with your amendment and then the definition, but I understand that you want to hold it, so.
Yeah.
And I still have a question about the definition, because the definition in law is PFAS chemicals, and this in this bill is just defining PFAS, and I think it's because it's an acronym. And you do, like Delegate Guyton had said, that fluorinated organic chemicals that contain at least one fully fluorinated carbon atom language is in the bill. I'm certainly willing to do whatever the subcommittee would like to do, but I do think that it's just, I think it's, the defined term is really just meant to define the acronym PFAS.
So, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
So, Kristen, would it be your opinion that by putting this definition in, we're in no way limiting the definition of PFAS as it is stated in my next bill?
I mean, I'm speaking with my drafter hat on. I don't think so, because this is in a different area of the law where you have defined terms and you're like, in this title, in this subtitle, XYZ means. I certainly understand the point that you're making, and Delegate Ruth brought up of having consistency in language, but I don't think this creates a conflict. But, you know, I think I wouldn't mind thinking about it for a little bit more. Also, in other areas of the law, we're talking about PFAS chemicals. This bill refers to PFAS substances. You know, I'm not sure. Maybe there is maybe we should clarify terms. I just would like to look at it a little closer.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Delegate Foley.
Suggestion, I don't know whether this works or not. Why not just refer to the language on page, where is that? In the bill about the fluorinated organic chemicals that contain at least one fully fluorinated carbon atom, including PFAS substances. Why not just refer to that in the definition? And just say that the PFAS as referred to in section 616A-03A2. And just keep it within the bill if it's the same reference. If it's the same language.
I think defined terms and substantive language is separate. I don't think in a it either define a term or you just spell it all out in this substantive provision. Especially when you're not using the term over and over again in the bill, it's permissible to just.
Well, we are using it over and over again in the bill.
Okay, my suggestion is that
We are.
we figure this out offline for the next meeting.
Yeah, I'll think it through and try to just have something clean that everyone can, I'll take the first stab.
No, I appreciate Delegate Foley, your suggestion. We can certainly work this out, I'm sure. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you so much. And I was wondering if Eric Galley, if I could ask him if he has any comments on this issue.
Sure.
I see his name.
Yeah,
I was
do you
just
wanna
getting
weigh in?
ready to sign off.
Oh, sorry.
No, well, honestly, we've been working on this for a number of years, and we like the definition that was done in the George Walter Taylor Act. And even though it says there, for the purposes of this section, we would really like to keep it consistent and use that same definition.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Eric. Delegate Ruth,
Thank you.
anything else?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. And as I mentioned before, I had told Nick Manis had reached out to me, asked if he'd have the ability to comment, I think, on this definition. So Nick, if you want to, if you want to weigh in.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank the sponsor, Delegate Guyton, for also sitting down and talking. And as we talk about the George Walter Taylor Act, which I understand the bill was, this bill was drafted after, in that bill, and to be consistent throughout the bill as it relates to all the products that cannot contain PFAS, we have intentionally added throughout that bill. And so and we support the bill with that intentionally added language, which is also in other states, California, New York, Vermont, Washington, that have broad PFAS phase outs. So that would be, the amendment that we would like to see, just like it is in the George Walter Taylor Act throughout the bill, that intentionally added and the definition of intentionally added, which I could get to Kristen if the subcommittee would, entertain.
Yeah, so I'll say, Nick, I know you have drafted an amendment. If what we'll be doing is we'll be taking up, fine tuning of the bill at our next meeting. If there's any subcommittee member that you want to reach out to request that it be moved, feel free. So that's our process for considering amendments.
Okay.
Anyway, so we'll take up any amendments to the bill, to the definition, my one-word change at our next meeting.
Okay. I appreciate it. And I'll reach out to you again, Delegate Guyton, if that's okay.
Excuse me. Oh, make sure I was all seeing. No, I appreciate that. And you have shared all of that with me. I would absolutely resist that amendment, but you're free to reach out.
Okay.
Okay.
Or not if it's going to harm children. So that's sort of where I fall on this bill. But thank you very much for speaking to us about it.
Okay. All right. So I think then we'll move on to the last bill of the night, House Bill 1153. Deborah Love, speaking of PFAS. We have amendments on that, right? Yes, you did send out a reprint, Kristen. So could you discuss the amendments? And again, Delegate Love, feel free to add to what Kristen says.
Sure. The amendments alter some of the definitions. It alters the application of the bill by taking out language that would have placed requirements on a user who that operates on a site where prior history of PFAS chemicals use is known or reasonably known, so that comes out of the bill. Under the amendments, the department must, in collaboration with publicly owned treatment works and significant industrial users, identify the significant industrial users that currently and intentionally use PFAS chemicals. The department must develop PFAS monitoring and testing protocols for significant industrial users that were identified under the requirements under the bill. The department, in collaboration with the publicly owned treatment works and significant industrial users, are required to develop PFAS action, they would develop PFAS action levels for addressing PFAS contamination from industrial discharge for pre-treatment permits. The department, again, in collaboration with the publicly owned treatment works and significant industrial users, must develop mitigation plans for addressing PFAS contamination from discharges. And then its requirements for the mitigation plans are set out. And so then some language is being taken out of the bill, but the language regarding the storage of PFAS chemicals, some of that remains. The disposal prohibitions are still in the bill. Let's see. Looks like the requirement to implement measures to reduce PFAS chemicals, those requirements are delayed from 2025 to 2026. Probably not the best overview, but I'm just reading the reprint copy. These amendments were worked on by the sponsor, and I do know that they do address the fiscal note concerns with the bill.
Okay, great. Delegate Love, anything you want to add?
Just as always, Kristen did a great job. I want to thank Jeremy Baker once again for all of his hard work. He put a lot of effort into coming up with these amendments so that we could move this issue forward. Thanks.
Can I move the amendments?
Yeah, Delegate Ruth, if you could hold on, so I may have a question, but we'll get to you shortly. Kristen or Delegate Love, so on page 4, and I'm sorry I didn't review the reprint earlier, but let's see, line 23. So the department, in cooperation with publicly owned treatment works and significant users in the state, identify the significant users that currently and intentionally use PFAS chemicals. Okay, so I guess it sounds like this is a collaborative process among MDE, publicly owned water treatment facilities, and significant industrial users as identified in the bill, right? I mean, they're defined, and significant industrial user is defined. So we'll develop a list of those users that currently intentionally use PFAS chemicals. Is that right?
I think they want to identify the users, and then the next steps would be to develop the monitoring and testing protocols that would apply to those users.
Right. Okay. And then apply those protocols, right?
Right. They want to know who would come under the bill first.
Okay. I guess if any. Okay. And then, I'm sorry, the bottom of page 4, develop mitigation plans for addressing contamination from industrial discharge for pre-treatment permits. And I guess that's defined in the bill as well, pre-treatment permit? Yes. Okay. Got it. Okay. No, I'm fine. Thank you. Thanks for your patience. Delegate Ruth, do you want to make your motion?
Yes, move the amendments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, is there a second? Okay, second. All right. Any further questions about the amendments? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
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 Opposed? Bill as amended, I'll move it. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of the bill as amended, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, bill passes as amended. Well, look at that. We actually finished earlier than I thought we would. Yay. I do want to say tomorrow, for our 8:30 work session, I neglected to include Delegate Terraza's House Bill 1284. Hopefully we'll have enough time to consider both Delegate Love's House Bill 1165 and Delegate Terraza's 1284. They're somewhat linked, to the extent that they both, covers stream restoration. So we'll do our best to cover both. If not, Delegate Terraza, if we don't get to it tomorrow, I promise we'll have a separate work session that covers that, or maybe combine work session and regular meeting. And speaking of meetings, no surprise, we're going to have to meet a few times. So I'm sorry, I see a few hands up. I'll get to you in a second. Few times next week, hopefully one before our regular meeting time of now, Wednesday evening, and then one time afterwards. The first one, to be determined, it may be Tuesday at 8 a.m. If we do that, does anyone have a problem with Tuesday at 8 a.m. if we set that for our next meeting?
Yeah, I think the Latino, does the Latino, oh, not Tuesday at 8 a.m. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't love it, but I'll be there.
Okay. All right.
Do you mean?
Thank you, Delegate Bruce.
Do you mean before caucus for those of us who
Yes,
are?
that's
Okay,
right. Yeah.
have caucus.
Okay. And Delegate Trusted, you had your hand up. Did you have a
Yeah,
question?
you kept saying hold these bills, the ones today, you kept saying hold them to our next meeting, but you didn't mean till tomorrow, or did you?
No. Tomorrow is a work session to discuss House Bill 1165 and hopefully your 1284. So our next, I don't know what's the distinction, but session where we'll be actually, having a formal agenda to vote bills. Tomorrow is discussion of those two bills. So it'll be the meeting after then.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize for this, but I really need to get these things more consolidated. I was totally lost on a bunch of these bills. I couldn't find the amendments. I don't know if they came in. If I'm not, I don't know whether my staff missed it or I missed it, but I really need more consolidation on this in terms of, so for tomorrow, if there are amendments to these bills, could we send that out like in one email so that
we try to send it out in one email, and I did earlier today. However, things come in through the day, and we do have to update those as we go. But the bulk of these amendments came through in one email earlier today.
Yeah, I just couldn't find a lot. I don't know why. I just couldn't find it. There were several bills that weren't on that list. I know they came out later. Then there were amendments that came out later. And I know I'm not saying it as a criticism. I'm saying it as I really need this to be a little bit more organized for me because I'm really struggling here.
No, I hear you, but I'm just trying to, there's really, other than sending it to your email, I'm not sure what else we can do.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, we did have, Delegate Foley, I hear you. We had a somewhat unique situation, case of House Bill 24, where we had updated amendments to send out. So, I hear you. And, during bill hearings this afternoon, I was looking at reprints so I could get as good a grasp as I could for what we're talking about. So, Kristen certainly, as you know, works very hard, very organized, and we'll just all pull together and make this happen.
I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that it's very difficult for me to follow it today.
Sure.
And I understand. I'm just trying. I'm not sure what else. Like, we don't have a Dropbox or anything like that. Like, I'm not sure. The one thing we could do, and if someone prompts me, I think I can share screens. I don't disagree. I just don't know what else we can do when we're sharing our materials in an electronic way.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I had my hand up, but then I coughed and it went down.
Okay, all right, Delegate Ruth, Delegate Teresa, if you don't mind calling Delegate Ruth first, okay, and then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask if we could like maybe set up a Google Drive folder to put all the stuff in for each, session. And that's the way, Mr. Chair, as you know, that's the way our delegation does it. They send out every week a Google Drive folder, and that way, Kristen, if there were other changes that came in, you could just upload them to the same folder.
That's a good
and-
suggestion.
Yeah. Have them all in one place.
Yeah, I mean, that is a good idea, and we won't ask Kristen to set this up in the next day or two.
Not
given
gonna
all the
happen
work,
tonight, but maybe
right.
maybe next time.
Maybe next time, but that is a good idea.
I like it.
And actually, Kristen, and I'm sorry, for tomorrow's just discussion session, there are amendments for these two bills, is that right?
Probably. That'll be
Okay.
my next
All right.
task of the evening.
Okay, all right. Okay. And just I figure when we recap where we stand on things tonight, House Bill 24 we held, and I said if we're going to be working off the reprint that Kristen sent out with the sponsors amendments. So if anyone has any amendments to that, please get them to Kristen. I'm just going to say Monday, okay? Because by Monday, so she can get them out to folks, because we're probably going to meet Tuesday morning. Let's see, we approved House Bill 78. We held 990. Once we get the official amendment, we'll get that out. 991 favorable was approved, favorable with amendments, needing appropriation sign off. See approved 992, held 1000, discussed 1008. 1055 favorable with amendments. 1101 held pending any sort of further clarifications. We can take up that bill at our next meeting. And same thing for 1147. Potentially clarifying the definition of PFAS. And then we approved House Bill 1153 as amended. So thank you. I think I got that right. And thanks for everyone's good work, and see you tomorrow. All right. Good night.